Hi everyone, I'm Moose, and today we're talking about the big
red cheese.
Phew. How did the character formerly known as Captain Marvel help make superheroes legal? Why was he picked to star in the first superhero movie ever? And how did his kid sidekick inspire the king of rock and roll? All you have to do is say the magic word, because holy moly, this is the true story of the Shazam family.
Oh my God!
That's crazy, right?
It begins in the Golden Age. After the smashing debuts of Superman and Batman, everyone wanted to cash in on the success of National Comics, later known as DC. One such outfit was Fawcett Publications, who started their own comics division in 1939 and debuted their new hero in the pages of Whiz Comics #2. Why not Whiz Comics #1, you ask? Well, it didn't actually exist. Back then, publishers would produce what are called ash can copies, tiny slapped together runs not for public consumption, as a way of establishing trademarks and copyrights before the competition could beat them to it. It's kind of like Roger Corman's unreleased Fantastic Four movie, just without the heart.
Doom, it's clobbering time.
The ash cans were printed under two titles, Flash Comics and Thrill Comics, and featured a brand new superhero known as Captain Thunder. Thunder was a streamlined version of an earlier concept where 6 humans were each bestowed a superpower from various mythological figures. The wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, you get the idea.
Must use stamina of Atlas!
Until writer Bill Parker and artist C.C. Beck condensed them into a plucky young orphan named Billy Batson, who transformed into a grinning, fully grown hero with a costume inspired by 19th century European military uniforms.
What the hell are you wearing?
It's all regulation, Michael. To get the top right, the pants had to be a little snug.
Unfortunately for Fawcett, their ash can scheme backfired. Flash, Thrill, and Thunder were all taken, so they hastily rewrote the word bubbles and introduced the world to Captain Marvel. Despite clearly being inspired by Superman, Captain Marvel quickly eclipsed him in sales, which understandably made DC a little salty.
Do you bleed?
So they sued Fawcett for copyright infringement in 1941. After 7 years of litigation, the court returned a verdict in favor of DC, but on appeal, Judge Learned Hand overturned the decision. He ruled that powers, costumes, and a flowing cape alone were not copyrightable, a precedent that paved the way for the entire superhero genre to exist. He sent the case back to the lower courts for a new trial, but by 1953, the comic book market was crashing thanks to the moral panic kicked off by Frederick Wertham's Seduction of the Innocent, and Fawcett just didn't feel like fighting anymore. They settled with DC for $400,000 and a promise to never publish Captain Marvel again. But of course, you can't keep a good hero down, especially when he's got such a fantastic family. Before the trademark troubles, Fawcett rushed to capitalize on the Captain's success by introducing a swath of red-suited superheroes in a similar style, starting with the Lieutenant Marvels in 1941. 3 superfans who all share the name Billy Batson, along with his powers. Fat Billy, Tall Billy, and the Southern-born Hillbilly were all well and good, but Fawcett wanted a more traditional teen sidekick to fill that Robin role. Enter Freddie Freeman, who was orphaned and nearly killed after an assault from Captain Nazi, and was saved only by Captain Marvel bestowing him with a bit of his power. Unlike his big red boss, Captain Marvel Jr. stays a teen when he transforms from Tiny Tim into his superpowered self. And for him, the magic word isn't Shazam, it's
Captain Marvel!
which had the unfortunate side effect of rendering Jr. unable to speak his own name. In the 90s, he was redubbed CM3 to kind of get around that whole mess, but that didn't stick. And now that the Captain Marvel moniker is gone entirely, he doesn't really have a name. Although he wouldn't mind being called King Shazam, in a reference to his most famous real-life fan, Elvis Presley. The King grew up obsessed with Captain Marvel Jr. comics. His collection is actually on display at Graceland. And as his career kicked off, he modeled his trademark pompadour hairdo on Freddy's killer cut. Later on, as his inner superhero fully came forth, he incorporated Junior's skin-tight jumpsuits and sparkly capes into his onstage persona, as well as his lightning bolt logo, which the King appropriated for his taking care of business iconography. Mary Marvel, on the other hand, was inspired by another real-life singing sensation, Judy Garland. When Billy discovers he has a long-lost twin sister, he teams up with Freddy to track down Mary Bromfeld and share the good news. They share more than that too, because her genetic link to Billy allows her to wield the power of Shazam. Now, Mary Marvel wasn't the first female superhero, not by a long shot, but she did beat Supergirl to the punch by a cool decade. Throughout the years, Mary has been wiped from continuity, powered up by Black Adam and corrupted by Darkseid's twisted servant, and drastically reimagined as part of DC's New 52 reboot. We'll get to that in a minute because the family tree doesn't stop there. As the series grew more whimsical, Fawcett introduced increasingly distant family members like Hoppy the Marvel Bunny and Uncle Marvel, a non-powered hanger-on who cons his way into the family but always finds an excuse when the time comes to tackle evil. Now, I don't know if we're going to see any cartoon rabbits clashing with Henry Cavill anytime soon, because the Marvel family, like the Big Red Cheese himself, is an inherently corny concept, which is one of the reasons it took a while for Captain Marvel to make it in the modern age. It's hard to overstate how popular Captain Marvel was in the 40s. He seems like a quaint relic today, but back then he was the hero to beat, selling over 14 million comics in 1944 alone. He even beat all of his costume counterparts to the screen in the very first superhero movie ever, The Adventures of Captain Marvel. A high-water mark for serial cinema that put early outings from Batman and Captain America to shame. Sadly, Cap's popularity took a massive hit during his legal limbo of the 50s and 60s, and even when DC licensed the character from Fawcett and introduced him into their universe in 1972, things just weren't the same, not even his name. Since Marvel Comics gleefully pounced on the trademark with their own Kree Captain Marvel in 1967, DC could only market the character as Shazam. He was still called Captain Marvel on the page, but from then on, all licensed properties were forced to use the magic word, like his 70s TV show. The series took some liberties with the concept, replacing the ancient wizard with a slightly less ancient mentor named Mentor, who drove Billy Batson around the country in a rockin' RV. As far as the captain himself, the costume's fairly decent, and in flight he rivals only Puma Man for his graceful soaring through the sky.
Puma Man, he flies like a moron. He has the power to rear project major cities.
Meanwhile, in the comics, Marvel and his family appeared in adventures set in their own cheery corner of the DC universe, until the crisis united all the worlds into a single Earth, where Shazam was strictly a solo act. At least until Jerry Ordway introduced Freddie and Mary into the mainstream canon with his incredible 1994 graphic novel, The Power of Shazam. Meanwhile, DC kept on trying to simplify the confusing Captain Marvel mess, like in 2006, when they decided that the whole fam needed a grim and gritty makeover. So, they let Freddie Freeman take the Shazam moniker, killed off the wizard Shazam and replaced him with Billy, who was subsequently renamed Marvel. As you can imagine, that didn't exactly quell the confusion, so in 2011 they just said screw it and rebooted the whole thing from scratch. As part of the New 52 initiative, we were reintroduced to Billy Batson.
Jerk.
Only this time, instead of being a lonely orphan who somehow finagled a job as a radio host, he's part of a foster family in Philly. He's also kind of a dick this time around, a sullen, cynical brat who the system has utterly failed.
Man, sorry about that.
Billy isn't the pure-hearted protector that the wizard hoped for, but he'll have to do. And when he speaks the magic word, he becomes Shazam. That's right, DC finally put an end to nearly a century of copyright confusion. And while it's sad to see the original Captain Marvel give up the fight, the distinguished competition needs to pick their battles in the face of Disney dominance, lest we have two on-screen Captains Marvel in a single year. On the bright side, Billy's foster siblings quickly became the newly christened Shazam family, with Freddy re-envisioned as a blonde, artful Dodger type who'd rather score some bucks and beers than stop evil, while Mary takes on a more motherly role. On top of that, the fam adds 3 new faces, each with their own special gift. There's Pedro, Billy's overweight foster brother, who becomes a super strong powerhouse, and Eugene, the geekiest member of the bunch, who gains the power of talking to technology when he transforms. And of course, we'd be remiss not to mention the dashing Darla, the smallest member of the bunch, who is bestowed super speed that leaves her Shazam siblings in the dust. Sure, it's a bit silly, even if they're more down to earth than Hoppy and Hillbilly.
Shazam.
Sorry.
The guy just cracks me up.
But Shazam and his family are never supposed to be realistic. They're the ultimate childhood power fantasy. They're what little kids dream of when they picture themselves as superheroes. Captain Marvel was born from an idealized 1940s world of wonder and whimsy. He still embodies the hope and optimism of the Golden Age nearly 80 years later. And his brand new Shazam family is perfectly poised to share the magic with a new generation of fans. Thanks for watching, everyone. By the time you see this, Shazam should be out in theaters, so leave a comment and let me know what you thought. Does it stack up to the rest of the DCEU? Is it better than Aquaman? Does it wash the taste of pee from Batman vs. Superman out of your mouth? Leave a comment, let me know, and as always, please subscribe to Now This Nerd.